Diplomatic community panel. Larry Haas, former White House official, senior fellow at the American Foreign Policy Council, and Ferry Dekerkov, former ambassador to Pakistan, Indonesia, and Egypt. Thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Larry, let me start with you. Can this be called in any way realistic if the Palestinians aren't on board?
Well, it can't be called realistic anyway, because it really upends longstanding American policy towards an eventual, peace agreement between the two sides. You know, there had been an assumption that there would be land swaps in which, major settlements in the West Bank would probably still be in Israeli control. But on the other hand, there would be some movement of Israelis. Now, basically under this plan, Israel would be able to retain all of its settlements on the West Bank. Another presumption, I think, of an eventual peace agreement was that the Palestinian capital would be, in the central part of East Jerusalem. Under this proposal, it's on the outskirts of East Jerusalem. And then finally, I would say that it doesn't really give the Palestinians a full-fledged state. It provides for a transition under which the Palestinians would have, some considerable measures of sovereignty, but would not be allowed, its own army, its own air force. So these are all pretty big departures from American policy. They come from a president that's under impeachment, standing next to an Israeli prime minister that's under indictment. Yeah. So the optics aren't working and the substance isn't working, and I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah, that wasn't lost on most of us when the announcement was made. Ferry, how do you see this? Do you think that the Palestinians are going to be pushed into this then?
The Palestinians have an immediate worry, which is to make sure that their defense against this rather horrible arrangement proposed by Trump, which is a win-win, of course, for Netanyahu, both politically and in substance. For the Palestinians, the very first thing is to ensure that nobody in the Arab world approved that arrangement, approved that proposal. And this is going to be very difficult, because one of the advantages that Trump has had is that because of Iran, he's managed to unify the Israeli and the Arab. And so the peace process for the Palestinian is a bit under the radar, although now it's certainly back on the radar. But the issue there is, will all the Arab countries reject outright the plan, or will tell the Palestinian to look at it carefully and see if there's a negotiation possible? One of the critical issues, of course, is the maintenance of Israel's control of the Jordan River, the side, the border of the river, and that is also landlocking even more the Palestinians than heretofore. And that was also one of the conditions that has been imposed on the Palestinians. Is that an issue sufficient to mobilize the Arabs against the plan? We'll have to see.
So, Larry, was there any merit in this idea that was put forward? Because part of it was about giving the Palestinians some business funding, giving them something where they could stand on their own to build their economy. Did you see any sort of merit within the plan at all?
Look, I do see some merit within the plan. I was really speaking to the politics of it and how I don't think that it's going anywhere. But sure, if there were two willing sides, could this be the basis, at least the beginning of what eventually would be two states living, in peace next to one another? Absolutely. I mean, the president is calling for $50 billion in global investment in the Palestinian side. It is certainly something, if he were able to actually arrange that, it is certainly something to build on. But just to go back to the point that we heard from our other guests tonight, look, the dirty little secret is that the Israeli-Palestinian issue is no longer a galvanizing issue in the Middle East. The real issue is Iran and its proxies and other Shia Muslim countries against the Sunni countries led by Saudi Arabia. And because of fear of Iran, the Sunnis are getting closer and closer to the Israelis, and the dirty little secret is out. The Arabs don't really care about the Palestinians and never have.
Okay, Ferry, pick up on that for me. Do you agree with that it's not the major issue of the day?
Well, as I said, since 2014, the issue has left the radar screen. And today, indeed, in fact, Iran is the only country today that really defends the fate of the Palestinian. Not that they care at all about the Palestinian, but it is to humiliate the Arab and to tell them, you see, you've been incapable of doing anything. But in fact, the long-term prospect, you may not believe this, but I think that Iran and Israel would eventually become closer over time, like they were during the regime of the Shah. All that is in turmoil, and what is going on is strictly a prop for Netanyahu, while Mr. Gantz is sulking in the basement of the White House during the event. So all of that is show and tell. I agree with Larry that were there a real opportunity to create a two-state solution, in fact, Netanyahu, for the first time since his 2013 Bar-Ilan University speech on the two-state solution, now we can talk about it. But the conditions under which they are proposed, that makes any negotiation absolutely impossible to sustain unless there's going to be some major change. And don't forget, it reminds me of the Oslo Agreement, where, in fact, negotiations were supposed to take place, and it never happened. In this case, again, the ball is in the Palestinian court to negotiate with a powerful Israel, and I don't think nothing will come out of it.
Okay, so the timing of this, then, is everything. An announcement for the sake of an announcement with two leaders who have serious problems in their home countries. But why open up that door at this time, considering it's going to be highly criticized without the Palestinians being involved in the process? Larry.
Well, look, we are talking about late January of 2020. The presidential campaign season is about to get underway. Jewish voters in key states could tip the balance, whether that's in Florida, or it's in Pennsylvania, or it's in Michigan, or it's in Ohio, other industrial states where Jews are a significant part of the population, particularly in large cities. Particularly Orthodox Jews have been delighted by the fact that Trump, declared Jerusalem the capital of Israel, that he pulled the United States out of the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran, which a lot of Jews felt did not serve Israel's purposes, and that he has provided now full-throated support for the largely the Israeli position going in when it comes to eventual, Israeli-Palestinian peace. So why now? Well, I hate to be a cynic, but look at the timing. We've got a besieged prime minister in Israel who needs a boost, and we've got a president under impeachment who's looking at a tough but doable re-election that certainly will be counting on rising numbers of Jews who appreciate his efforts in the past to help Israel.
Ferry, do you think that either of these leaders will get much of a boost out of this, or maybe Netanyahu will get a bigger boost than Donald Trump on this?
I think that Netanyahu is definitely going to get a boost, and the way that Trump treated Gantz in the morning talking to him, but the whole show, of course, is with the prime minister, that will certainly give him a boost as the greatest friend of Israel ever. Now, in terms of the president, it's probably giving a bit of solace to the Republican who are finding themselves hounded, particularly with the Bolton issue, which is a very important one. But ultimately, as Larry said, it's part of an overall policy and I would say preparatory stage for further electioneering. So it's all show, and unfortunately, because there should be a lot of substance underneath.
Larry Haas and Ferry de Kerkhoff, I do have to leave it there. Guys, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk soon.